Hi, I'm Nick from Dorman Products, and this is Andy, a hardcore DIYer, and today we're here to talk about repair, rebuild, and replace. All right, so Andy, what do the terms mean to you when I say repair, rebuild, remanufacture, replace? What do those terms mean to you?
Yeah, I see all of those as options for solutions, right? These are ways that I can solve my problem, but they are distinct from each other. So we'll start with that first one, repair. That just means we're making it work again. That could be anything from a zip tie around a hose to hold it in place, all the way up to repairing a crack in a block or something like that. A rebuild, in my mind, sounds like we're going to take something apart and we're going to take care of the essential items that make it function. Maybe there are some wear items in there, might be some bearings or seals that you want to take care of, and then put it back together.
Find what failed.
Find what failed.
Yep.
And a replacement, we're just wholesale, pulling something out, putting something else in. Yep. Maybe something new's going in, maybe something used on another vehicle is going to be finding its new home. Yeah, maybe it's aftermarket, but we are wholesale, pulling it out and putting something else in there.
Yep.
And then a remanufactured item, to me, is something that has failed or worn out. It's a part that a remanufacturer has worked over and made to function like new. That would be like the bare minimum that I would look for in a remanufactured part.
Yeah, so one of the things I want to elaborate on is like between rebuild and remanufactured, because I feel like those terms get used interchangeably.
They do.
And yeah, and they're not. You know, a rebuild is finding the actual problem, taking it apart, finding the problem, repairing it. Where a reman, it's addressing all the wear items and really refreshing it to make it like new. Where a rebuild isn't necessarily like new, but some people do think that.
Yeah.
So at what point, like give me some examples of where you would use some of those different options.
Well, we could start with something like a rebuild. To me, I'm looking at rebuilds where, especially when you're working around components that are designed to be taken apart, fixed up, and put back into use. But there are situations where that's probably not worth your time, or maybe it requires equipment that you don't have.
Right.
And that's where a replacement can be a pretty good option. All I need to know is that I can take this one off and get another one and stick it on and it works again.
Solve my problem.
I can save the education for another time. But,
exactly.
And then when it comes to recycled stuff, is this part functioning in the way that you would expect it to? Is it safe to use?
Right.
All of those things should be going through your mind as you're looking at recycled stuff. So as a do-it-yourselfer, I don't really have any customers. I'm my own customer. But Nick, I want to hear a little bit from you about what do you tell customers, what options they have before getting into a job?
Absolutely. So obviously the first step I do is figure out the problem and what's the best course of action in my own opinion, and then what are the other options that might be more cost effective or whatnot. And there are always some options that I won't even consider,
Don't even mention it.
And I won't mention those. But I will always cover all the viable options with the customer and let them make the ultimate decision, because there's always a cheaper or a better way to do it, and I always want to give that option. But when there's a lot of risk involved, I want to make sure that I'm giving them, at the end of the day, I don't want to come back, so I'm not going to give them an option that might be, result in a comeback. So how do you feel about availability of really cheap aftermarket parts? Is that like killing the reman industry?
As far as them killing the remanufacturing industry, again, this is coming from a DIY perspective, but the quality of some parts coming out of the remanufacturers has taken a bit of a dive in the last 5-10 years. At least it seems that way to me. I've pulled parts out of boxes before, looked them over, and thought, wow, I could do a better job than this. It all comes down to research, in my opinion. Look at that manufacturer, look at that specific part, check out some forum posts, maybe talk to some friends of yours who may be into the same kind of cars, look at reviews that have been posted on sites that sell these different parts, and see what people are saying. It can get a little sloppy out there, so again, doing your own research.
Yeah, and I do agree. I do think that it is, has taken a toll on the industry. All these easy to get, not necessarily killing it, but it is taking a toll. But
giving them some competition. Let's just say that.
And to your point, they're doing it to themselves too. A lot of these remanufacturers aren't doing a great job. They don't have proper quality control, and this might sound biased, but working here at Dorman, seeing the process that our company goes through for Reman, the quality control, all the checks and balances that we do, figuring out all the failure modes, making sure they're all addressed, it has given me more confidence in buying remanufactured parts, because I know 20 years ago when I got into this industry, I had terrible luck with Reman. But working here and seeing what they go through and, you know, seeing how well they work, it has given me a lot more confidence. So again, like to your point, you have to do your research, know who you're buying from, and make sure that their quality and, you know, their know-how is there. All right, so I mean, you are a DIY, so I'm sure you use your fair share of recycled parts. How do you feel about them?
Love them. Recycled parts are one of the first options that I look at when I need to address a problem. They tend to be really inexpensive. They can be easy to come by if you know of local sources that have vehicles like yours kicking around. For the most part, it is hard to say no when exactly what you need is sitting right in front of you and it's available for prices that guys like me can afford.
Absolutely, and while I do agree with that, there's a lot of times where, you know, me being a shop owner or working in a shop, I don't have time to go to a yard and pull parts from a car. And, you know, if I do get the full serve and they come and deliver this used, you know, known good OE part, but it's wrong, it's not the right part, and we waited, now we're tying up a bay for another day or two.
Sure.
It's much better to know the part number, know the application, order what you need new in a shop scenario. So does the variable meaning of rebuilt irritate you when you get a part that is not top quality or it's missing parts that it should come with?
Yeah, it drives me up a wall. There aren't really standards for what constitutes rebuilt.
Right.
I don't know what was done to rebuild it. I don't know what was replaced or just painted over while the rebuilder was doing their thing.
Yeah, it's very irritating when they advertise one way and you open the box and you're just getting literally a painted piece of, you know, used part.
Yeah. So, Nick, as someone who works professionally in a shop environment, I got a question for you.
Sure.
If you had to choose between aftermarket and used OEM, what would you go for?
Like all of these questions, it's situational. You know, it could be because the aftermarket doesn't support it. They don't have it. It could be an ECM or something like that where you have to go to the OE. So a lot of times people think it's best to get an OE part because it was the original part, you know, original equipment manufactured. It's a little more complex because sometimes they were, you know, built with, you know, different flaws that didn't come out until 5 or 6 years later. And, you know, the OE is not going to remanufacture these parts. They're not going to, you know, change designs. Coming into the OE fix with Dorman, we're actually addressing those issues, so it makes it like more clear cut. It might not even be something that failed. We have a PTU where they didn't have a drain plug in it, and now we added a drain plug and makes it serviceable, things like that. So, you know, we thought of the things that the manufacturer didn't think of, and they couldn't have thought of it until it became an issue. And when it did, it was too late for them, but it was perfect timing for us. So we were able to really come out with these parts that were an actual solution to the problem.
If there's a way that I can make it easier for myself next time I'm in here, or make it easier to prevent this part from wearing out and working on it again in the future, then this is a great time to start thinking about what's going to happen next as well as what I need to do right now.
Yep, and that's literally the point of OE Fix and why it makes it sometimes a better option to go aftermarket instead of OEM.
Sure. I think we're going to keep hitting on two things. One is that you need to do your research and know what you're getting into.
Yep.
But the other one is that you need to have an understanding of what your time's worth. And my time is worth a drastically different amount than your time is worth. You need to keep vehicles moving in and out of your bay. That is your job.
Right. Having overhead and technicians to pay and all that.
And even though we might be looking at some of the same types of solutions to our problems, the when and where of using them is going to be pretty different between us.
Absolutely. All right, well, I think we covered that subject top to bottom. It was great getting your DIY perspective.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys have anything to say, please drop it in the comments. This is Andy. I'm Nick. We'll see you next time.